Um, so when we draw, when we draw with contour, we tend to sort of say, okay, so like here's a line, right? And it's going to go up and then it's going to come over. I have a packet of yogurt raisins here. So there's an edge and then it's going to come back and then it's going to come up and it's going to come. Oh, that wasn't a good line. It's going to go through there. Okay, always easier to push than pull, especially with straight lines. And then there's an edge in here, boop, 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 boop. Okay, so like with contour drawing where you're using a single line at all times, it's important to, like, you're trying to capture information. Now, one of the things I would then suggest is, now that you've got this little beginning contour, is then to start to go in, and you can see that I start to rotate my pencil and I can diversify the line weight based on the pressure that I put into that drawing. Now, one of the things that I can decide to do is I can use a harder edge now to correct my drawing. And I can use a lighter line to discover, to seek out form. It's really hard to draw at this angle. There we go, that's a bit better. So like I want to enhance that back corner, I can put a heavier line there. So we're talking about diversification. So if I'm drawing the way I draw a bit more naturally, which isn't contour, when I draw, like if I'm drawing, like a 17th century dolphin, they always drew these dolphins that looked like these big giant fish. All of this gestural line work, which we will get to, builds up the surface of the drawing. Okay, and the surface layering, all that gesture layering, yeah, trust me, the dolphins from the 17th century don't look like dolphins. All of this underdrawing is often as we go through the quarter, it's the type of stuff that students want to erase. And I don't want us to think that way. Underdrawing is drawing. Okay, and the technical term for it, which I can't spell, but I know, is pedimento. Pedimento basically is Italian for underdrawing. And drawings like from the Renaissance that have pedimento are considered to be more of a collector's item than drawings that don't. Because the pedimento allows us to see where the artist's hand went and the choices that they made to enhance certain types of things in the drawing. They are not decorative. Okay, so underdrawing isn't about decoration. Underdrawing or pedimento is about seeking. So even here, those lines that I have, I know it's not, I need to turn it this way maybe. Okay, those lines that I have are seeking form. And as a result, build up surface, which is underdrawing. So let me see if I can move the camera over here, make my life just a little bit easier. I'm just trying to figure out, that what's hard is like so that you can see me draw without me covering my drawing while you can, it's a lot to figure out here. So when we're thinking about making a contour, it's different from like my hippo dolphin, 17th century hippo dolphin here, okay? because all of this gestural line is all form seeking, cross contour building dimensionality. And we can't do that with contour because we're going slow, we're being methodical, we are, obviously seeking with a single line. So when you start to seek with a single line, you do have the chance to sort of do cross contour seeking, but it's very hard to maintain a slow, methodical approach always for everybody. And that's one of the reasons why I like to challenge us with contour at the beginning, because it makes us slow down and observe. Observation is the key to drawing, just as muscle memory and tone pitch recognition is the key to a musical instrument. And so we can do a contour drawing, and still go through and find places to enhance with a darker line. And when we do that, then that diversification of the line weight creates a chance for us to have a more exciting visual experience as an observer. And as a drawer, it gives you the chance to actually make decisions about what you want to enhance. Okay, so as we move through the process of drawing, one of the big things that you are attempting to learn is like, how do you, with something that has so many challenges to it, how do you make decisions as you're making it so that it's functional and successful? And the key to it all is always observation. So, if I'm drawing a head, start with a basic shape, locate the placement of the forms, think about the perspective, gesture, 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 feel through the head, think about all the aspects I need to think about to make sure that the head is functioning the correct way, and then start to go in and look at the shape of an individual eye, the shape of a nose, the shape of a lip, and build up slowly, slowly, slowly. Okay. Whereas when most people try to start to draw, they're automatically going to start with contour, and they're going to spend all this time on one eye. And they're going to work that eye completely to the nines. It's going to look like it's going to the Oscars. And then they're going to jump over, they're going to try to figure out where this eye goes. Okay. And when they do that, they recognize that they made a mistake in that distance. But because this eye looks so good, they don't want to change it. So what we're trying to do is, and anyway, so it's because they don't want to change it, the drawing ends up being wrong. So what we want to do, even with contour now, is to start to look at how to draw all of an object with contour, slowly, methodically, thinking about edges and shape. And then after drawing for a set amount of time, going back through and saying, yes, this is the line that I want. Yes, this is the line that I want. But I also want this line here. And as you start to add new lines where you want to enhance the drawing, you start again with them being light, and then you go darker with them. And so you're always going through the same process. You're always starting with a light line and then making it darker. And so we are starting to develop the skills that we need for gesture drawing. Like And this is a hand, right? And it's on an arm. And then that's connected to a bicep and a tricep. So that's gesturing. So we're going to get to here, but right now we're just here. Because we're still trying to see how edges influence one another and create dimensionality. But that doesn't mean that after we make choices, we can't go back through and start to enhance places that we want to make look more strong and more correct. So we're going to practice this today. So I want to show you too, just because that's in the pad. This is something, you know, these are drawings I do of people during Zoom lectures. If you want to get better at drawing, draw all the time. That's one of the keys to learning to draw. So when you're on a, you know, when you're in a Zoom lecture, when you're just like when you're in the classroom, draw the people on camera. They don't need to know they're posing for you, okay? And in a way, it's actually better than when you're in the classroom, because in the classroom, you just have the back of everyone's head, usually, because you're not facing. Here, you get to see everyone's face. So that's a bit of advice for you. All right, so here we go. My laptop's dying, of course, as always. So we're going to start off right now with just looking at and thinking about our drawing process. So we're going to start off by drawing a finger. Let's talk first about proportional relationships in the finger. Is that dark enough, or you need something darker? Okay. What are the names of the bones in your finger? So think about your finger. Okay, what was that?
Metacarpals.
Okay, so we have metacarpals. So if we have a hand, we have metacarpals. Okay, there's 5 of them, right? 1 for each finger. What are these bones in the wrist called then?
Carpals.
Yep. So carpals, metacarpals. And in your feet, you have your tarsals and your metatarsals. And then you have, right, like you have 1, 2, 3, 4 digits, and then you have your thumb. So what are the bones in the thumb and the digits called?
Phalanges.
Perfect, right. Absolutely, your phalanges. And I'm going to probably spell it wrong. Okay. And then, of course, here you have your, it's been a little bit, brain come back to me. You have your radius and your ulna, okay? Ulna goes to the pinky, radius goes to the thumb. That's how I always remember them. That's what my little brain was doing in that moment. Okay, so this is what I want to show you, right? Like, is that you have a phalange shaped kind of like this, and it kind of comes in, boop, 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 boop. It's kind of like a little chicken bone. So the phalange in your finger, you have this really wonderful, magnificent sort of relationship that nature has provided. So if we have the length of a phalange, and that is, you know, if we divide this into 3 sections, if that is this longest phalange, it has a technical name. It's either proximal or distal. I think it's proximal. Then you have 2 more phalanges. My neighbors are getting a free lesson in anatomy, I think. And so these 2 phalanges here are proportionally related into this long phalange in a 1-to-1 ratio. So you can measure that, right? So don't mean to use my middle finger. So take this length here and measure it up. And generally it's a 1-to-1 ratio, not every single time, but generally. Now, if I take this phalange here, it's a 1-to-1 ratio to there. And if I take this whole phalange there, it's a 1-to-1 ratio here. So these phalanges here are in a 1-to-1 ratio, and then overall they're into a 1-to-1 ratio, and then the whole thing is in a 1-to-1 ratio with the metacarpal. So when you look at a hand, two things primarily happen when students draw hands. They either draw everything too long and too thin, or they draw everything too wide and too short. The other thing that happens is that students end up drawing a lot of like claws, because like when I say draw your hand, you like put it this like some like really stiff position so you can hold it, and you're like, oh, okay, that's my hand. And so then like no one's hanging out like this, you know. We generally have a more relaxed hand. Hands have poetry to them, but a lot of times when we're learning to draw hands, they have you know, it's nothing but climactic drama all the time, right? So the subtlety of the hand is lost, and what is found is like the moment that you find out that it was really the mother all along. Okay, and so we want the love story. Okay. And one of the things, you know, I showed you, I'm doing this project, I'm recreating 160 drawings by Boucher, and I love Boucher. One of the things that I've learned from Boucher is like, relax. People will figure out it's a hand. It's okay. Like sometimes I'm drawing these Boucher drawings, like recreating them, and I'm like, dude only put 2 fingers on that hand. And it's like totally fine. You don't even notice. And then you're like, Boucher, 2 fingers? It's like a Cannonball Run moment. None of you know, perhaps, Laura, maybe you've seen Cannonball Run from many, many years ago, but you know, it's like my favorite scene in that whole movie is like the scene where he's like, he's like, God is our co-pilot, and he's like, where is he going to sit? Because they have 2 seats in the car. It's just funny 80s movie stuff. So here we have a 1-to-1 ratio. Then we have a 1-to-1 ratio. Oh, my camera just turned off. Babbling about Don DeLuise. So then we have, you know, 1-to-1, 1-to-1, 1-to-1. Isn't that wonderful? And so let's talk about drawing, like how do we adapt that? Okay, so when we draw a finger, so go ahead and draw a rectangle. Now we haven't done perspective yet, but basically you're going to make it look like a French fry. So like, just make sure the edges are all parallel. So like this is going to go this way, this is going to go that way, this goes that way too, and then this goes that way, this goes that way, this goes that way. And look, you just learned 2-point perspective. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry about it if it's not. We're just being playful. So this phalange has a measurement. So come down, try to match that measurement here. Boo, 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 boo. And then just draw another rectangle here. Now we got 2-point perspective rectangles. If they're not perfect in perspective, no worries, not a big deal. Then we divide that in half. Now we got what I think, don't quote me on this, is your distal, and then the second one, and then your proximal phalange.
You're correct, by the way.
What's it?
You're correct, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Okay, and so we've got that 1-to-1 proportional relationship. Everything I know about anatomy, I learned from being an artist. And so I only know like what I need. I have friends who teach drawing and they expect students to learn every single 276 bones in the body or whatever it is. And I'm just like, that's a waste of time. We're not going to need it as artists. Okay. As artists, we need to know the biggest bones possible, and that's kind of it. So then when we draw a finger, I'll use this to help us here. So you can grab your red watercolor pencil if you want. So go ahead and just redraw that. And let's make it look more like a finger. So fingers are basically round on the bottom because you have padding there. And then it's kind of round on the edge there. And this is nice because it reminds us that we have this plane here versus this plane there. So then when you come up to the top, as you come to each one of those lines, those are obviously the knuckles. You're going to make a little bit of a dip, like whoop. So a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a dip, smoother, longer dip. Then for the knuckles, you're going to have like an uppy dip. So up, up, up. There's a finger. Now inside here, you also have your fingernail, boop, 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 boop. And we remember, of course, that the fingernail has front and back. So fingernail looks like this. Maybe yours don't, maybe yours are a bit different, but they do have a thickness. I miss having acrylic nails. They just fall off all the time because I'm always in solvents and things as a painter. So they're painful and they fall off. But if you have acrylic nails, look at the shape, you know, and think about where does it come in contact with the finger? Perhaps you bite your nails, right? So maybe you have a lot more finger and just a wee little bit of nail left. Make that observation. What is the distance from the end of the finger to the nail bed? Okay. So then these places where we have these lines, those are the places where the fingers bend. So if we go back and we take this drawing I did here, and instead of it going like that, we bend it this way. You know, now we have a finger that's bending. Don't worry, we won't talk about feet yet. Feet are really difficult. Okay, go ahead and grab your watercolor pencils. Mine just need a quick sharpen. I'm gonna just use them. And just find a clear spot on your page. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. So you take your red watercolor pencil. You can take your finger. Okay, and we're gonna do a contour drawing starting in one spot and working out, and we're gonna draw our finger with contour like we've been doing, paying close attention to all the bumps, all of the problems that we see, all the little irregularities, all the dimensional forms. You can incorporate cross contour. And then one of the things we're going to do, and I'm just going to speed this up just for because I want to keep your attention, is we're going to get down here, right? We got this knuckle. Well, if we look, we can see that my knuckle is not dimensional. How do I know? I mean, it is dimensional. How do I know? Because it's casting shadows. So I want to find all of the elements to the knuckle. And remember that lines are ideas. And that as ideas, lines are holding places. They're not actual. And so we want to do our best to capture the dimensionality of those spaces between the edges of the knuckle. So we're going to do this. And then, of course, the next thing will be to go in and use our blue. And then I want you just to enhance certain areas, certain features. But I want you to do both with continuous line, but I don't want you to draw over everything. Ha ha ha. You can also add line, but I want you to really focus on using that blue only in the areas where you really want to enhance the red. But I want you to do it without picking up your tool. So you're going to have to learn some control because you're going to go through some places where you just need a really light line to cross over the contour. So go ahead, please. And we're going to spend, spend like 5 minutes on the red and then 3 minutes on the blue. Okay, thank you. I am recording now. So we can see that when we get close into the eye, that the eye has all these different types of planes. When we have talked in the past, we have talked about the idea that, we don't want to draw symbolically. Like this is not an eye. It's a symbol for an eye. Okay, and it's the thing that you're using. It's a sign. The sign signifies eye, which signifies perhaps sight, or someone's watching you. And so we're moving away from using symbols. We're thinking about how things are put together. How are things dimensional? So when we look at the eye, we can see all these places where there's overlapping. Especially as you get older, this starts to sag. This starts to sag. There's places where our forms, they start to interact. It's not a smooth surface. We have a dimensional face. And so we're looking for the shifts in lightness and darkness that help us to understand the dimensionality. This is really important on the nose. You can't draw the nose in contour or any other way without thinking about form. If you draw it as a cartoon, you might get a nose that looks like that. But again, it's a symbol. What is the nose? How is it made? Well, up here we have the nasal bone. Right? This is a bad program for this. And then we're going to come down the bridge of the nose. And we can see the differences because of the light and dark interactions. We see here, we have a light plane. And then we have like a middle toned plane. So we can see how many planes are visible. Over here, we have a darker plane. And then we have a lighter plane. Then we have a lighter plane. I wish it wouldn't do this. And then over here, over here we have a top plane, side plane. And then of course, underneath here, we have the underneath plane. And then we have the nostril. And then here we have the nostril. And then inside the nostril, we have darkness. And then we have darkness. Then we have light. And we have light. And so you can see that it's just not all just one line. Now, nostrils, we tend to show them as being like these dark holes, but they're not. Like, we know that because every single one of us has picked our nose in some point in your life, in our lives. We know that you can put a finger up there. You know, I can pierce that. I can, you know, my septum goes through that space. It's not just a dark circle slapped on my face. It's a transitionary space. It transitions from the skin outside and transitions, that skin just transitions up into the nose. And so when we draw nostrils, we definitely don't want to draw a nostril like this because it's not a black hole. In fact, if I change the position of my nose, which I won't, perhaps isn't always the nicest thing to do, but it actually could be the lightest part of my nose, depending on where the light is and depending on how my head is turned. Same type of thing happens on the mouth. You know, we have different planes of light. This looks like a line, but is it a line? No, it's a shadow. We have two lips joining. It diminishes space between them, which diminishes light. So that's actually not just a line. We can see on the lips that it has a light plane. Boop, 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 boop. Light plane. Right? And then it has a darker plane, dark plane. Okay. And so there are multiple edges because each plane is an edge. So I'm very dehydrated apparently when I look at my lips all the time. I'm like, whoa, I'm dehydrated. So when we look in here, right, like, look, that's how many planes, just simple planes are visible in the mouth. Gosh darn it, you can't draw a mouth like this. You know, the computer doesn't even recognize it. It makes it an oval. No, absolutely not. Okay, so we're going to work on drawing some facial features. Okay, so what we're going to do, and y'all don't worry, this is only the first of many bad pictures of yourself you'll have to take for the class. Because you see, when we take things like selfies, we manipulate, we use the camera to our advantage. We hold it at an angle, we move our head at an angle. We know what angle we look good at. When we draw, we don't want to do that because it actually makes things harder. Like a self-portrait where you wore a lot of makeup is so much harder to draw than a self-portrait where you just look like you woke up and rolled out of bed. We light ourselves with a harsh light because it shows the planes so that we can see the anatomy, so that we can capture the information. And so when we do work from our faces, like it's generally the, you know, the photograph isn't generally the kindest photograph we can take because we want things to be really clear. It's actually one of the reasons why I really dislike doing commissions for portraits. And right now I'm working on these two children. I've been working on them forever. And like the mom is a wonderful mom. wonderful lady, but you know, she sent me pictures and I paint the pictures and she wants it to look like not the pictures. And I'm like, well, that's what your kids look like based on the photographs you gave me. You know, what is our perception and what is the real? Plus, the camera distorts. That's why it's always best to draw from observation. So let's go ahead and pull your picture up so it's nice and big on the screen. Okay. And I've really enjoyed painting these kids, by the way, because I just like the challenge of it. But I'm always saying to my studio manager, remind me to not accept any more commissions of children. I will. Money talks, you know. So let's go ahead and pick an eye. So eye. So there's my eye. Boop. Okay, and so I have my eye visible. It's not perfect for me because I've also got to show you what I'm drawing. So I'm just going to start with a point. So I'm going to start at the tear duct. And I'm just going to draw out from the tear duct. And then automatically I can see that there's an area where there is a light part of the thickness of my eyelid. I'm not going to draw eyelashes, y'all. Don't draw eyelashes. You must resist the urge. Not until you're ready to draw each individual eyelash with multiple edges. So then when you get to drawing the scilla, which is the white of the eye, make sure you think and look to see where does it come in contact here? Where does it come in contact here? So like when I draw the tear ducts, look, I can see inside there. Go through the iris to the pupil. Come down. And so then I've got a light plane versus a dark plane because I didn't get much sleep. As usual, and I come back up here, and then I've got, right, and then through here, there's a dark plane. And then up here we have the eyebrow. We're gonna put it in as a shape, but we're gonna go through and add some very special little hairs. You see, I just rotated my pencil. Look at the movement of the eye, the hairs in the eyebrow. When you see them all clumped together, just leave it as a clump, but you can show the outside edges of some of them. Be selective. Okay, so we're gonna spend 5 minutes. And then you can take your blue and we're gonna do the same process. Enhancing certain areas that we see as dark or important, but keeping the blue on the page at all times so that we can continue that contour. When we get up to the eyebrows here, there's like a edge there I want to enhance, and then I've got like this one looks really important here. This one looks really important here. This is a clump, so I'm going to kind of leave that clump where it is, but there is a light one in there, of course. There has to be a white one. Yeah, whee! And so try to, capture information of those hairs. Make them dimensional because they are dimensional, especially my eyebrows because they're just crazy. Okay, and so then we'll do 5 minutes for the red and then we'll do 3 minutes for the blue. Okay, you might not get to your eyebrows. Don't worry about it if you don't.
Are we doing continuous line for the red?
Yep, continuous line for both. Okay, off you go. Okay, so go ahead and stop. Now we're going to move to the mouth. Okay, so again with the mouth, we want to see if we can't find the places where we see forms, okay? So we're going to say, okay, so like I just did this quick red contour. So after doing the red contour, I'm then going to take my blue. I'm going to use the blue to only enhance the places on the contour where I see darkness or I see edges I want to really make stand out. You are looking for the differences between planes of light and dark. So maybe there is a plane of darkness versus a plane of lightness right here. But then also there's a little bit of reflected light in there, like a little bit of a bright light. So you want to go through and identify all the areas where you see light and dark shapes. And then when you go through with your blue, you want to only enhance certain edges. Okay, remember that we're not making symbols, right? We're not doing like, this is a mouth, right? And so this might look less than like, this might not look like a symbol for a mouth, but it looks more like the actual planes of a mouth versus this idea. So go ahead and we'll do 5 minutes with the red and then 3 minutes with the blue.